Welcome everyone to the Racist War and Everything. You're joined by Athenian, and I've got Nolsey here. And Nolsey, you're still basking in the glory of the crushing victory we had on Saturday night.
I'm still flexing on the fucking Twitter, formerly X, formerly Twitter. I'm still fucking taking in all those little bitches over there and seeing all the crying and seething and coping. And I'm still having a good time. I'm gonna be honest about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the seething and coping is actually almost like threats being issued, though.
Yeah.
Like that.
Oh yeah.
They're saying, "Oh, you want to give a no vote? Well, we're going to deliver. We're going to return the favor in kind." With and there's been a number of things that have been said. Like,
yeah.
what have you seen?
I saw people hanging posters over the freeway. You said no respect. And then there's an Aboriginal flag with a fist, the communist fist on it.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that yet. There are government buildings and that where they've got the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags at half-mast to represent a week of mourning. They've also talked about a week of silence as well, kind of like when you have a moment of silence when someone dies. So, yeah, I mean, they're taking this very seriously, very personally. And, we'll get into that, the reaction a little bit later. For now, let me F5 the ABC, and I will go through the latest results. So this is as of about 6 p.m., 16th of October. So I'll just read out the no vote for us. So the national no vote is 60.7. New South Wales, 59.6. Victoria, 55. Tasmania, 59.5. South Australia, and this is the one that really surprised people, 64.8. Queensland, 68.9. WA, 63.8. Northern Territory, 60.5. And then the only jurisdiction to vote majority yes, the ACT, on 39.2. So, what kind of trends did we manage to see in terms of demographic and voting patterns and behaviours? So, probably won't be any surprise what I'm about to tell you, but the electorate, the federal seat that voted the most for yes was the seat of Melbourne, which of course is held by the Greens leader, Adam Bandt. They voted a whopping 78% yes. So yeah, that says something.
Public servants not far behind in the ACT.
Right. Now, independent seats generally went towards the direction of yes. So far, anyway, I read this yesterday. Every Teal seat has voted yes.
Gay boys
almost
vote yes.
All.
Gay boys vote yes?
Well, yeah, it seems that way. However, some Green seats did not vote majority yes. You'd think every single one of them would have had it in the bag, but apparently not. I can't remember which ones they were, but they must have been the ones in Queensland. That had to have been.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Yeah. So, that's where you tended to see people voting yes. Now, there were still some other surprises here, though. Linda Burney, the Indigenous Affairs Minister, her seat voted majority no. Julian Leeser, the former Shadow Attorney General, who actually has dedicated a lot of his life to fighting for an Indigenous voice, his seat, his Liberal seat, also voted no. Other trends that we see here, these aren't surprising, but the wealthier areas tended to vote yes. And that also almost perfectly correlates with the inner cities. Basically, the more urban you go, the more chance you have of voting yes. And then the further away from the capital cities, the more chance you have of voting no. So suburbs, would sit kind of in the middle.
What also
but pretty much
correlates
all...
with that? What also
What's
correlates
that?
with those things?
You mean like the lack of Aborigines?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things. I mean, there's other
Likelihood
stuff
of
too.
experiencing Aboriginality.
Yeah, but you're also just insulated from life's conflicts generally. Like, yeah, you're insulated from Aboriginal crime and harassment and whatnot, but just everything else too, which is why it's easier for you to, be really interested in things like
Make
climate
an abstraction
change.
of it.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, you have to make your own tragedies when there are none in your life. And so climate change is like one of the perfect ones because it's an existential threat. And yeah, I mean, that's where you have to kind of use abstractions
The
to
only
imagine.
material is numbers on a graph from institutes going up, and that's about it.
Yeah.
There's no other material to climate change.
So younger people, obviously, were more likely to vote yes. And also, I found this one interesting. Everything that I just went through in terms of the demographic trends and the patterns of voting throughout electorates and states very, very closely mirrored the results in our last referendum, which was 24 years ago, on the Republic, and, well, also on a preamble for Indigenous recognition in the Constitution. A lot of people forget we voted on that as well in that referendum. So, yeah, it looks like things haven't really changed all that much, despite the fact Australia does look pretty different to what it did 24 years ago, with the amount of racial replacement and demographic change we've had since then. We'll get into that.
A lot of people
were
noting that the Indians in the vast majority voted yes. That was something I didn't expect, but I guess they were dumb enough to believe that they would get a slice of that cake.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what we're going to get into now. Was like some of these other groups and states and how they voted and why. So yeah, seats with a high Indian ancestry appear to have voted against the voice to Parliament. Oh wait, hold on. My story is saying the opposite of yours.
Oh, okay.
Nosy.
I got mine from the AEC, so that may have been a cope on their behalf.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, no, look, this is what the article is saying. The polling generally suggested that Indian groups were going to vote yes. I think also one of the reasons for that, I remember there was some Indian guy who was very prominent for the yes campaign. I forget what his name was, though. He had like a weird kind of Indian/Australian accent, weird kind of hybrid. Like if Dinesh D'Souza was Australian or something.
Traditional Aussie Gupta Manjik Singh.
Yeah, but I don't know if you remember, we actually speculated when we did the Racer Decides. And by the way, racer.biz, if you want to catch the live coverage we did on this, we did about 3.5 hours with Randbot and Ryan. And thank you guys for doing that. That made my job a lot easier. I was able to just kind of sit in the background and play drops and stuff the whole time as they commented on it. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. One of the reasons why we thought maybe Indians were so keen on voting yes is because they want to be mistaken for Aborigines and actually just claim all the benefits that they get. And they thought an Indigenous voice might be another one of the ways that they could take advantage of a system that privileges one racial group over another. Because Indians have done that.
Town meetings, and what I got from that was they thought that there was going to be some further allotments given to them as a result. They were being told that there was going to be like something in it for them, in a very nebulous way, obviously, but they were told that like, hey, look, you get a slice of this cake too. That's what they're doing to all the ethnicities. It didn't really work on the Asians. Yeah. They kind of saw through that.
Well, I mean, look, the Labor Party in Victoria in particular have been good at pandering to the Indian community, as we've covered on here, talking about the ethnic branch stacking that they get involved with. And they do essentially say, if you guys all sign up to the Labor Party and support X candidate, we're going to make sure that you get these grants for the Indian community. And they've done that, right? Like tens of thousands of dollars worth of grants. So maybe this time around, the Indian community wasn't quite as sold as what they were before, because an Indigenous voice would be like a very kind of indirect way for them to reap any kind of benefits from it. I'd be interested to see some hard numbers here and know exactly what the split was. But yeah, according to the Australian, it was actually majority no. I'm guessing it was close, though.
Yeah.
So
actually, I'm just looking through your thing. You don't have this. This is a new story, but the AAC actually tipped their hand as to what their plan for a gay up was going to be if the margins were closer. They got caught. They've tried to explain it away, saying, "Oh, this was just a transposition error." It's not a transposition error if it's literally if it's a 5% takeaway from each questionable state you had. So if you had like the ability to fuck with 5% of the margin in New South Wales, Victoria, and Queensland, that's not just a transposition error. That's a bit malicious, isn't it? And they basically got caught flipping the results in enough seats to take up 5% plus or minus.
Well, yeah, I mean, 5% is massive in an election.
Yeah.
That is massive.
They found these small population seats on the borders, and they originally, when it was going to yes, they were withholding results, and as soon as no peaked up, basically as soon as Tasmania came in, they all instantaneously got their results published, even though that they had had the votes already been counted for those areas for the last 12 hours before that. So,
okay.
Yeah, they tried to pull a sneaky, and then the margin got blown out, and then they're like, "Oh, look, sorry, these guys were actually no. Oh, please don't fucking paddle our balls."
Well, look, this is what we said earlier in that Rand was saying as well, that they would attempt to pull tricks like what you just described. And I said, yes, that's true. However, you can only pull those tricks to an extent, and that basically means if the margin is so whopping, and it was, well, then it's very hard to cover up. So because the margins were always above 5%, there was nothing they could do to, actually convince the Australian public that actually, it's just too much. They don't have the power to do that.
They try to take advantage of these border rural seats with only like 1,000 to 2,000 people in them apiece. And they were confident they could get away with that.
I also got to point out 5% in an election is actually considered a landslide victory, okay? Like if Labor get 55 and the Coalition get 45, that is considered a landslide. Well, in Victoria, the most progressive state in the country, they voted 55% no. So if you were to assume this was an election, that is a landslide victory for the no case in Victoria. That's pretty amazing. Now, so the Australian also notes that, generally speaking, seats with high migrant populations did not exhibit a clearly different trend from those without such demographics. The swing was defined was defined as the difference between the seats two-party preferred Labor vote in 2022 federal election and its yes vote in the referendum. So they're not finding a clear correlation between party vote and how they went in terms of the referendum. I would love to know how many Labor voters voted no. That's what I'm most interested in, because it's obvious, where the Greens went, and we already had some data on that. Most of those Green seats went yes. The Teals went yes. The Coalition we know goes no. What about Labor, though, considering that the Labor Party were the ones who started this through Albo and the commitment to the Uluru Statement from the Heart?
There's no way we could have got these margins with just Coalition and some independents and some right-leaning. It needs to be a decent fucking margin of Labor support.
That's why I would love to see the proportion in terms of Labor voters, because I'm absolutely certain, for the reasons you just gave, that the majority of Labor voters voted no. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So that shows that, you can separate these issues.
Bipartisan hatred.
Yeah, but I mean, this is not really a simple left-right dichotomy. Just like immigration isn't either. we've covered many polls showing that the majority of Labor voters want a reduction in immigration. And I remember one of the polls we went through even showed that 1/3 of Greens voters wanted a reduction in immigration. And that's pretty amazing. So people of Chinese ancestry were said to have been split pretty much 50-50 in terms of where they would go. Now, the Chinese have generally voted Labor, for the past 2 decades or so. That is changing. Ever since you had Gladys Liu, who was elected in, the seat of Chisholm, that we often call Walk in a Box Hill, things started to change a bit. In other words, when the Liberal Party started to play the race card as well, started to play the identity politics, they got ahead. They realized the tactic that Labor was implementing and that it actually works. So that is perhaps why the Chinese are a bit sort of iffy. They're just waiting to see, hey, who's going to support my ethnic group, and then I'll vote whichever way. And in this referendum, it was kind of hard for them to judge. Will this be good for the Chinese? Will it be bad for the Chinese? Don't know. So that's why the vote was split.
Well, I could say that, you've got 2 blocks of Chinese voters. You've got your liberal dissident escapees. Those are a good fucking block. They're quite like the early Chinese immigrants and the sons and daughters of the standard immigrants. And then you have, as mentioned, standard immigrants who are just mercantile people. They're not very political whatsoever. They're quite literally just looking for economic opportunities and ways to fuck with the system to get those.
Yeah. But I'd generally say that's kind of immigrants generally, maybe more so the Chinese, but yeah.
Depending how mercantile they are. I think the Polynesians are just here for KFC.
Yes. Okay, so look, just in terms of the states and how they voted. Now, I remember, we always basically predicted that, in terms of the highest no votes, it would be Northern Territory, WA, Queensland, because in that order is the largest per capita population of Aborigines. Now,
no one has been into Perth fucking CBD without getting accosted by an Aboriginal at least once.
Yeah, exactly. We have contact with them. And look, as Noel Pearson said, that this referendum was likely going to be a referendum on the popularity of Aborigines. How did people actually perceive them?
Turns out people fucking hate them.
Yeah. If that's true, you can debate whether or not that was part of it. I would say it was. Then, yeah, this is a pretty depressing vote for Aborigines. But anyway, here's the order in which states voted in terms of highest no vote. Queensland, then South Australia, then WA, then New South Wales, then Tasmania, and then lastly Victoria. And if you include the Northern Territory in that, hold on, let me just quickly flick over. 60.5. 60.5. Okay, so the Northern Territory was ahead of New South Wales, but actually behind WA. All right, so that's interesting. WA beat Northern Territory. I was expecting Northern Territory to be on top here. Now, the Queensland vote, 68.9%. That is absolutely whopping.
You have to understand that a lot of ADF personnel, their votes aren't counted in the Northern Territory, they're counted in their home states.
Oh, okay. So
that's the weird thing about Darwin. Darwin's votes are almost entirely remote voting station in fucking Aboriginal communities, and then a handful of seats in Darwin itself. And there's only a few Darwinites who actually vote for Darwin there. So
well, yeah. Look, I was also going to say
still no.
Yeah, well, the fact that, the AEC did their very best to get unenrolled Aborigines enrolled, and then also tried their best to get them either to vote early or to get their shit together on referendum day, that would have also played a factor. The fact that you have such a large Aboriginal population, that also means you've got a large amount of Aboriginal voters. In an election, sometimes it just doesn't matter because they don't turn up to vote, but this time is different. They were all rallied.
In the close to $500 million they spent on this fucking thing, I remember there was a budget allocation, and 120 million was literally spent on making sure fucking Aboriginals write name on piece of paper and submit slip.
Yeah, and can spell a 3-letter word inside a box. That was an effort. That cost a lot of money. No, but most of the commentary I've seen has actually said that the biggest surprise, far and away, was the number 2 no vote, and that was South Australia, 64.8%. Because like I said, those 3 jurisdictions, WA, Northern Territory, Queensland, were widely expected to be on top. Queensland made it, WA made it, Northern Territory almost made it, but it's squeezed out by South Australia. Now, what's the speculation here? Well, the commentary I tend to agree with is the fact that in South Australia, despite the fact they have a pretty low Aboriginal population, they have legislated their own state-level Indigenous voice. And we might remember that they were supposed to actually have an elected body, so the representatives were supposed to be sitting in that board prior to the referendum. I forget what the date was exactly, but it was supposed to be like at least a couple of months September? Before.
Oh no, it got pushed back to September, then pushed back again.
It's been pushed to March of next year. I'm not sure if they pushed it twice, but I know that it's March next year anyway. Now, they just said it was simple administrative backlog and whatnot, the slow workings of red tape and stuff. But a lot of people just didn't believe them. A lot of people said, well, actually, we think that this is going to be a dysfunctional body, and that's why you guys are putting it off. You don't want us to see the results of kind of a microcosm example of an Indigenous voice before we go in to vote on the federal Indigenous voice. So that, I think, would have had something to do with it.
Saying that they need to repeal that legislation considering the state's voting pattern on the referendum, which I hope...
Right. I mean, it's very unclear now. I mean, considering, Peter Dutton wants, well, at least said that he wanted a legislated voice and wanted a second referendum, which, as we pointed out, costs around $500 million. With such a thumping no vote, they're going to have to reconsider that,
Well, and you can see the left-leaning fucking parasites on Twitter right now chastising Dutton because he's just recently came out and said that maybe the Australian public need a long break on the entire reconciliation process.
He might have worded that kind of badly. I wouldn't care. That's wording I'm fine with. I don't think he really.
I'm not sure if that quote's true.
Well, look, he, in terms of going to a national vote, he would certainly be wise to say, yeah, we need a break from referenda for a while. But yeah, he's got to rethink that position. He should have bloody never have committed to those two things before anyway. But hopefully this will sort of force his hand. Yeah, but look, I was just also going to say that one of the other reasons why I think South Australia may have done this was because, as I said, if this is a popularity contest on Aborigines, well, even South Australia saw a significant increase in Aboriginal crime in the lead up to the referendum. I remember we covered it a couple of weeks ago, but it was to do with, in America they call it mutual combat, where you have improvised weapons. You just kind of grab whatever there is around you. There was some huge incident that happened there in sort of the outskirt, like outer suburban Adelaide. And even that was scaring the shit out of some people, in a state where they usually don't have, the level of crime that we say do here in WA with TikTok videos of kids stealing cars and that kind of shit. So yeah, that's perhaps why, the two reasons why South Australia went in that direction. Okay, so I watched Insiders on Sunday. All three panelists they had on were clearly disappointed in this. You'd think that they would actually want to bring some balance to that debate on Insiders, like even through tokenism, have one token conservative who like Stephen Price or something, who's weak as piss. But they didn't even do that. They did have someone from the Liberal Party on as a guest later on. But you know who it was? It was Julian Leeser, who also supports the yes vote. But they went through what they thought were the reasons for Australia voting no. So let's go through some of them. So the number one, and I've picked this up generally speaking with media commentary as well, not just on insiders, was that people were unsure. People were unaware of the detail and exactly what it would have meant. And this is their own fault. They did not have the proper debates on this. Linda Burney refused to debate Jacinta Price, for example. That was still a wise move tactically because she would have been destroyed. But the very fact that they did not have wide-ranging debate here also meant that they opted for what was deemed to be the more radical model. The activists like Noel Pearson and Marcia Langdon didn't want to compromise and wanted to go with the full-throated voice model that they had been advocating for years. It was through that the coalition opposed it, because we always know that, like, the coalition doesn't oppose a voice to parliament per se. They simply oppose the proposed model. So if they had gone with a more palatable model that would have appeased the Liberal Party and maybe even the National Party, they might have been able to secure bipartisan support for the voice. And as Albo pointed out during the concession speech, that no referendum in Australia has ever passed without bipartisan support. In fact, that was the only reason he gave when he was asked why this failed. So yeah, I mean, this is the left shooting themselves in the foot, where they want to shut down public discussion and debate and say, no, it's my way or the highway. They did that to themselves. Okay.
Well, getting hoisted by your own retards, that's a pretty common thing to happen with the left.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And, you know, Noel Pearson referred to this as his life's work. Well, your life's work is a pinch of shit now. Oh, you're right. Now, this one, misinformation. Now, of course, the way they described this idea, this concept on the show, was that all of the misinformation was on the no side. Okay, so this was basically them saying that the No campaign had lied to the Australian people and that too many Australian people believed it as a result. Wow. Okay, now, I'm sure there was still a bit of misinformation on the no side, but what about everything that was there on the yes side as well? Like the idea that like the parliament wouldn't be any more likely to pass legislation just because a representation was made by the voice, for example, or that there was no threat of the High Court broadly interpreting what the voice meant and where its powers would therefore lie. There was a hell of a lot of legal analysis done here by experts, by former judges, showing that interpretation was broad.
Yeah, there was 3 different fucking reports saying the exact same fucking thing from judges who were like all over the fucking spectrum. Some of them saying like, oh, look, maybe it's not nothing to worry about, but yeah, on paper this could happen. Other people being a little bit too pants on fire, really. But saying like, yeah, no, that this is well within the purview of this kind of fucking body.
Right. Yeah, one of the things I was going to go through on the race to the sides was in about a week or two before the referendum, there was this extensive report put out by a former High Court judge. Jeanette Albrison wrote a really good article on this, saying that, yeah, actually all this stuff, like the High Court could actually effectively veto Parliament's decision in favour of the voice, was actually well-founded. You would obviously need to take it to the High Court to test it. But this guy was actually arguing quite persuasively that, yes, the High Court would be given would use its powers of interpretation to give the voice extra power. That was not misinformation at all, but that's what they were referring to it as on Insiders. Okay, now this is an interesting one for us. And that is that having Aborigines on the side of the No campaign, most notably Jacinta Price and Warren Mundine, caused confusion for Australians. Now, what they meant here was thinking, oh, what, you mean Aboriginal people can actually support a no vote? Maybe that makes me think that it's not necessarily for Aborigines' benefit, like if they're arguing about it.
Is the Aboriginal community a monolith?
Exactly, yeah. So that's effectively what they were saying here. So this was them saying that this was a wise conservative tactic. Now, this is a tactic that we've attacked many times here. First and foremost, the reason why I don't like it is because I don't even care if it really works. I am just sick of the debates always focusing around why we have to build up other races of people and never white people.
Why can't we advocate for ourselves and our own fucking interests? Why does it always have to be a fucking brown face half measle-mouthing it like a fucking retard?
And why can't we have a message like the NSN guys over East saying the voice is anti-white and that is why we oppose it? Why can't we have messaging like that? So even when you're running a campaign like this, you have to have two Aborigines fronting it. Now, I would bet this. If you just had a couple of white guys fronting that campaign, and if you did not even go for all this rhetoric of a voice of division, like dividing us on race and all that kind of stuff, all the typical conservative points to advocate a no vote, I would still bet that the no vote would have come in on top by pretty much the same margin. And as we can see, it's about 60-40. It's massive.
It was completely over for them at the end of last year.
Yeah, because, I think that there were a hell of a lot of Australians, and here I'm talking white Australians, obviously, that just said, no, I'm sick of the amount of privileges and handouts that they get. What about the rest of the country? Or actually, what about me as a white person? There were a lot of people out there asking questions like that. And
what about
like what you were saying there.
That was a pretty universal one.
Right. But I mean, the turning point, as we've said many times, the Australian wanted to say that Jacinta Price's National Press Club address, where she talked about the violence committed against her mother and stuff like that, was a turning point in the national debate and what may have solidified and secured the no vote that would eventuate. No, I don't think so. When we were running through the polls on this show at the beginning of the year, we noticed the turnaround happen when you had the uptick in violence in WA, Queensland, and the Northern Territory. So we had those TikTok videos we mentioned in WA. You had the huge surge in violence in Alice Springs, and then bringing back of intervention era laws and grog bans, dry zones, all that stuff. And you had a huge uptick in burglaries in Queensland, where you had that woman stabbed to death. When those incidents were occurring, that is when we saw support for the yes vote go down markedly. That was the turning point, all right? Which again shows that, Noel Pearson has a point when he says that this is a referendum on the popularity of Aborigines. People said, no, I don't want it. I don't want anything that's going to...
You would only see an uptick in yes, because for the vast majority of Australians, Aboriginals are just a non-fucking entity. It was only when they got reminded what they are.
Yeah, to an extent. But I also think that there's a general idea that the nicer you are to Aborigines, the worse they become, because we see that all the time. I mean, when we relax law and order measures against them, their crime goes out of control. All right.
When we allow them to get pissed drunk, they start killing people.
Right. When you allow alcohol back into their communities, all of a sudden they're out of control, smashing each other to pieces. And I think that there is a general idea of that out there. And considering that, all these trends haven't actually changed since 1999, there's a hell of a lot of non-whites out there who think that as well, you know? And they're even more comfortable about expressing negative attitudes towards Aborigines, okay? If you're a Chinese person who owns a deli and you've got some, an Aboriginal population in your surroundings of around 5%, you're guaranteed to hate Abos.
You are aware.
You're guaranteed. Because they're going to be out there stealing shit and vandalizing your shop all the time. And no, they don't have any patience for that. What else did we have here? Oh, yeah. So about the only thing that they said may have been the fault of the left was grievance politics. The idea that this is about punishing people in favor of an underclass or the underdog or whatever. Yeah, to an extent. But again, for the reasons I just named there, like we're sick of actually just kind of helping people who are just going to bite the hand that feeds all the time. Okay, when they had Julie and Lisa on, this is like the only kind of technical argument that was made, and that is that the Yes campaign rejected what was referred to as the co-design model. Now, the co-design model meant an incremental process where you had regional and state level voices. So think of what you've got in South Australia, even though the body's not formed yet. And then also at, local councils. So you have like little mini versions of the voice in different parts of the country. He said that should have been allowed to run its course. So, for example, in South Australia, they should have been able to form that body, make representations, and let the Australian public look on at it and make a judgment as to how it was functioning. But it also should have happened in other states and other regions. And then after that, that's when you have further consultation and engagement with everyone who's been running those local voices, and then you have a referendum. So he said, had this kind of slowly incremental approach. And he said if that had have happened, then it might have succeeded. And look, he might have been right, because like I said before, if you had approaches like that, where you had further debate, consultation, fleshing out the detail, then you would have been much more likely to bring the coalition on board and secure that bipartisan support that you need for a referendum to pass. So
yeah, and also it's easier to slow boil a population.
Right, yeah. It's the frog in the spa, exactly. So yeah, that was about the only argument I think that kind of made sense when I watched Insiders, coming from a Jewish lawyer. Okay, so in terms of the reaction to it, we've gone through it a bit. Flags at half-mast, banner drops with kind of threatening language on there. Marcia Langdon said that Australia has been poisoned and that there is no fix for this terrible outcome. I'm not sure if we've got recent comments from Noel Pearson and Pat Dodson, but before the referendum, Pearson said a no vote would mean endless division and mutual suspicion. I like that second part, mutual suspicion. Aborigines and non-Aborigines suspecting each other.
Hi,
and Pat Dodson
I'm suspicious if you're going to stab me or not. You are suspicious.
Yeah, I am always suspicious of Aborigines around me. I am always suspicious that Abos around me are going to want to mug me. Believe me, that the vote had no bearing on that whatsoever, Noel. Pat Dodson said that a no vote would mean telling Aborigines that they have no right to be here in Australia. Okay, we're not exactly saying that. Even white nationalists don't say that. We admit they don't have anywhere else.
Brought them back to India.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, and then there was just a general idea that Aboriginal people as a race were hurting very much Saturday night, Sunday morning. That's what Richard Marles said. He was also interviewed on Insiders. And
hurting what? Their livers?
One of the I'll just bring up I forget what her name is. Let me just quickly find this story. But there was a female journalist on that panel from Insiders. And let me just quickly bring up her name. Isabella Higgins. Don't think I've ever seen Isabella Higgins till I watched this episode. But she referred to the black anger that is out there. And also that the kind of discourse and dialect that was present during the debate for the referendum had been mild-mannered and conciliatory and polite. She said now that Aboriginal people are going to reconsider that politeness. Okay? So in other words, this is another one of these threats. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, and the other part of that doesn't make sense is, hold on, you're telling me that Aboriginal people were polite? Is that what you're telling me?
Motherfucker, like every time I talk to one of those fucking barely fucking human, and that's being real fucking generous, barely human fucking knuckle draggers, the fucking sentences is punctuated with, "you fucking white dog." Is that polite? Yeah, can you get even less polite? Okay, let's see it.
That's usually what they tell you when you tell them you don't smoke, is something like that. I've got it plenty of times before. But I mean, okay, let's assume that what she's saying is true, though. Or at least let's say it's true for the Aboriginal leaders. It still wasn't. I mean, if you look at the kind of things Noel Pearson and Marcia Langdon were saying. But what she's basically now saying is, okay, white Australia, you're in for it and you're going to cop it. You're going to cop abuse regularly and you deserve it because you voted not to recognize us. That's essentially what it is.
Fucking bring it.
Yeah, and there is no doubt in my mind that we're now going to have the no vote blamed for instances of Aboriginal crime. I've got no doubt about that at all because
that's happening.
They use things like the stolen generations, which didn't happen anyway, but they will use that as a way of explaining, why someone ended up in prison over a horrific act that they committed. They do it all the time.
Why did this indigenous teenager turn around and cave some woman's head in with a fucking concrete block? Oh, stolen generation.
We've gone through stories on here before where judges and magistrates have cited colonialism as a reason for an Aboriginal person's criminal behaviour. So I have no doubt that now they're going to start using the voice as another excuse, another scapegoat. So Linda Burney was almost crying. We did the live reacts actually at the time. I think it was genuine because like you could start to kind of hear it in her voice when she got to the more emotional parts of it. So she could well be genuinely upset over this. And perhaps she's regretful that she didn't have the talent to, say, debate Jacinta Price on this because she is just absolutely hopeless. I mean, can you imagine a world where a white Linda Burney actually makes it through the political ranks? Because I certainly can't.
Fuck no. Fuck no.
That is an example of a woman, who wants to tell us about a systemic disadvantage of Aboriginal people, who has only made it to a position as high as she has because of the fact that she's half caste or quarter caste or whatever the hell she is.
She's like a fucking high yeller. She's only one standard deviation below clinically retarded.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe that, the average Aboriginal person is still dumber than her. But yeah, that's true.
It's hard to fucking fathom that level of stupidity in general.
Right. Okay, so look, what happens now, and how do people continue to react? Well, the government is saying that this is not a no vote for reconciliation or closing the gap or, the myriad of other bloody causes that we piss up money on a daily basis. So that's going to all continue, of course, and that has bipartisan support. Peter Dutton, even though what you said before, he might be saying we need to hit the pause button on reconciliation or something. That's probably not what he meant.
I'll see if I can get the quote up because they're fucking kvetching about it on Twitter.
Yeah, I think if he did say that, I bet he just put his foot in his mouth because I can't imagine the coalition saying that. No, we're going to. So yeah, look, it's still going to mean like business as usual. in terms of what the government does, the funding that's given out, the bureaucracies that are pork-barreled, that is not going to change. I don't see that changing anyway. Now, what about the more radical groups here? Lydia Thorpe, has said that the Black Sovereign movement will benefit from this. Even though she supported a no vote from the progressive point of view, she's saying that nonetheless, defeating the voice at the referendum in a way is going to be seen as anti-Aboriginal. And that could further radicalize the Black Sovereign movement, that they spell without a C here in Australia. Radicalize them, help grow their ranks, and then push for even more radical proposals like having a treaty or having multiple treaties. Now, that's viable.
On Monday, the opposition leader all but abandoned his much criticized suggestion of a second referendum, declined to recommit to the idea, warning Australians don't want a referendum for some time. Where's the quote? Where's the
quote? So he's just talking about the referendum. Yeah, that's what I thought. Because, as I was saying, it's a 60-40 result. It was an absolute thumping.
Also, not recognition. Recognition, not reconciliation. My mistake. We said that the question put to the Australian people should have been on recognition and dropped the voice because some people supported recognition but not the voice. The Prime Minister didn't do that, leading to the situation that we're in. The Prime Minister embarked on a divisive path. Yeah, just recognition is what he's saying. Like, hey, look, that was bad. Now the Australian people are burnt out in the idea.
Okay, look, that again goes back to the idea of the model, because remember, conservatives, he's right. Peter Dutton himself supports constitutional recognition, but he did not support a constitutionally enshrined voice. John Howard supported that. He tried to insert it in the preamble in the 99 referendum. Tony Abbott supports it. This all kind of actually goes to show that had they compromised a bit, you can even get those from the far right, the so-called far right of the Liberal Party, on board to do all of that. But we've rejected it again, and you can't have constitutional recognition of Aborigines without a successful referendum. So now that, remember that proposal, constitutional recognition, has now been defeated twice in Australia. That's a pretty resounding no. They'll still keep talking about it and everything, but I don't think in our lifetime anyway
has said that he will continue to publicly support the Uluru Statement from the Heart in his campaign.
Right. So Richard Marles committed to that on Insiders as well, and that gives them sufficient wiggle room because what are the pillars of the Uluru Statement? Voice, treaty, truth. Okay, so that could well mean that they're then going to go and move on to negotiating a Commonwealth treaty. Because remember, they're doing it at the state level. Okay, they've got it in Queensland. Also, they're underway doing it in Queensland and in Victoria as well. And they're doing the truth-telling as well in Victoria. So you're not going to escape from a lot of this stuff. Even though it was a thumping victory for the no side, you can't stop all of this other stuff pushing forward with all this. You had an Aboriginal campaigner, his name is Michael Manziel. He was a no campaigner, but he was a progressive no campaigner. And he's saying now what we need to do is, we need to move forward with those things like truth and treaty, but we also need to have electorates, seats at the federal level that are earmarked for Aboriginal people only. So it's there specifically as Indigenous representation in the Parliament. And yes, you do have examples of this in other countries, New Zealand, for example. But you know where else you have kind of a system like that? Singapore, all right?
Oh,
because they have a racial makeup of their parliament to make sure that each ethnic group is essentially proportionately represented.
Yeah, it's literally like the reason why Singapore has so many fucking rules on the books. Like literally the current not historical law in Singapore, the current standing law in Singapore could fill up 5 fucking libraries, is because all the fucking tendencies and grievances and normalities of each individual race that is in that country has to be catered to at all times. So if you want actual true multiculturalism, you can't have liberties. just putting it out there.
Right, and I mean, this also shows that if multiculturalism is such a natural thing, then why would you need to actually do all of that? Like, have to gerrymander
monoculturalism is natural, kind of to a degree, but we're just seeing a really fucked up version of it in the West because we've got capitalist monoculturalism.
Right, that's true. We're going to get a bit into that stuff when we discuss the Israel-Gaza conflict in a bit.
Oh, fuck me.
Yeah, but look, I have to emphasize, though, that, like, okay, fine, we defeated this, and very comfortably as well.
Battle
but
doesn't
just remember,
end here.
Yeah, no way. Aboriginal activism and how it is an elaborate rent-seeking program that is parasitical in nature, demands access to the resourcefulness of white Australia, and increasingly, I guess, non-white, non-Aboriginal Australia, or you're never ever going to see that go away. Remember, all the same advisory boards and bureaucracies, it's not like they've been dismantled. They're all right there. They're all still right there. And yeah, this is definitely not going away anytime soon.
Nope. Next thing we'll probably get it as legislation. That's a lot more, less directly democratically involved.
Yeah. Okay, so, well, actually, let me get your opinion on this, Nolsey. What do you think are the chances of Anthony Albanese resigning or, say, eventually resigning as a result of the referendum loss?
Too egotistical to resign. Too many of the members of his party have kind of thrown their weight behind him for them to ask him to do so. I think he's just going to wait to get shit canned at the next election.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of leaning in that direction too. Now, people who listen to us would, they'd remember that I kept pointing out that David Cameron resigned as Prime Minister when the Brexit vote was successful. Of course, he supported a no vote for that. Now, I didn't make an outright prediction in terms of referendum. Yeah, well, I mean, his party was divided, though. So that's one of the reasons why actually I still think it's different. The reason I always mention that, though, was to show that it is undoubtedly going to have an effect on the party and on the leader. Referendums obviously are very, very political, and they are in a way sort of like an election of the confidence of the party or the person who is proposing whatever the change is. So
it's a pretty strong political bet, and you got a lot to lose.
Right. So even though, look, my prediction is no, Albo will not resign, but that doesn't mean this doesn't have lasting political consequences, and also just in terms of his popularity, consequences for his popularity are definitely there. And then conversely,
there's a lot more things to think about when you're a Labour Party member and you want to throw your weight behind him now than there was a year ago or such.
Right. Now, something else I said, and this is definitely something I stick to, is that Peter Dutton's popularity is going to go up now. I'm very, very keen to see the next lot of polls that come out. But also I was going to say, the other reasons I don't think Albo is going to step down, well, for one thing, this was a position adopted by the entire Labour Party. So it's like, okay, if Albo steps down and you replace him with someone, well, you're just replacing him with someone else who supported the yes vote. Not much point in that. Also, I would say that David Cameron resigned after 6 years in power. So there was a little bit of an it's time factor against him. Albo's only been in for what, a year and a half, I think. So that is its time factor just isn't really there. Also, I would just say that it's not as politically consequential. Obviously, there are consequences to it, but when they were voting for Brexit, that was in terms of like removing yourself from a global economic bloc or zone. That had enormous like political and economic ramifications. What we had in Australia, this was largely social. Obviously, there were still political and economic factors too, but it's largely social, meaning that, people are more likely to say, oh, well, okay, maybe he lost a lot of money, wasted a lot of money, but, this is a cause he believed in, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm willing to forgive him for that.
Although we probably have a better understanding than the general body politic of Australia about this, because they would still be debating if this was a good or bad thing. Obviously, we've made up our minds on it. Because there was no result, there's no proof in the pudding.
Yeah, that's it. So, nonetheless, his popularity will go down. The Labor Party's popularity will go down. And remember, even though they may have had a bit of an extended honeymoon period, polling for Labor has actually declined as of late because of things like cost of living pressures and petrol prices, wages not going up, all that kind of stuff. That will continue. And I did say that I wouldn't mind betting, I'm not making this prediction, but I would say I would not be surprised if Peter Dutton is the next Prime Minister at the next election. Because I think with Albo's authority being damaged with this vote, as well as all of these economic factors that are not going to improve by the time of the next election, those two factors combined could mean the end of Albanese, and he would be only the second Prime Minister in Australian history to be voted out after one term. Could happen.
Could do. Let's see.
Now, yeah. So also, look, as I said before, that the relation between party or electorate and a yes or a no vote was not exactly there. The correlation was not exactly there. People are saying that might be a bit different in Queensland, because in Queensland, you had, remember, they're the jurisdiction, actually, that voted most overwhelmingly. No, it was almost 70% for Queensland. They have found the no vote was so thumping in even Labor seats, and it would have to be at least one Green seat as well. I can't remember, is it the seat of Brisbane? I always forget the ones in Queensland. Okay. But anyway, if that's any indication here, the Labor Party are in serious trouble in Queensland. And Queensland is always a decider state, depending where their seats tip can determine the outcome of an election. So if Labor have a very, very small grasp on Queensland seats, that could be disastrous for them at the next election. So it said only 3 of the 30 federal electorates in the state of Queensland delivered a majority yes vote. Only 3. That's 10%.
Good on you, Queensland.
Holy shit. Okay, actually, that's all I have on the voice commentary. Anything you wanted to add to that before we move on?
That's pretty much it. It's not over yet. We'll get it in other ways. They're sneaky bastards like that.
Yeah. So don't enjoy this victory, but remember, this stuff is never going to stop. You always have to fight against it. So, okay, the other topic that is certainly been also dominating the news this week. Don't worry, we do have other stories. Okay, it's not just Voice and Israel today. There are other stories, but we do have the current humanitarian crisis, I guess you could call it, in Gaza. Last I saw, the death toll is over 2,000, and it seems like it's spread evenly on both sides, something like that.
Yeah, especially since Hezbollah has got involved. Syria, I'm trying to get confirmation on this, but apparently Syria has also retaliated a little bit as well. Which makes sense, like a couple of weeks before this all broke off, Israel, for some reason, decided to bomb a military or missile strike a military graduation ceremony in Syria, which is a fucking marvelous idea.
Right. So, I mean, they've cut off the power, food, water supplies. Hospitals are like running out of power for their generators. And they've essentially ordered the entire province or occupied zone, whatever you call Gaza, to evacuate.
To die. Yeah, they did. They said go south to Egypt, then proceed to missile strike the passage, and then when Egypt sent humanitarian
Well,
aid
hasn't
on
Egypt
a convoy,
closed their border?
Yeah, well now because that was the threat. Like, we're gonna actually start striking you, Egypt, if you try and help.
Right, and I mean, I'm sorry, don't they always accuse the Palestinians of want to push the Jews into the sea? Now they're literally pushing Palestinians into the sea. Because,
Hey,
the
go
only
south!
country,
Missile strike.
the only country that they border besides Israel is Egypt, and they've got their borders closed. So,
Yep.
this is going to be a fucking shit show, to say the least. Whatever
Yeah.
happens there.
We're looking at an open camp genocide here, and by the way, the thing is like, oh, release the hostages and this will all come back. No, if they release the hostages, it's just going to be a full-on bombardment campaign. The only reason why it's not like every missile everywhere all at once right now is
Right,
because
it's
there's an amount of hostages. That's it.
Right, yes. And I wish people would understand that's the reason why they actually take hostages. It's not like, typically what you see in negotiation situations in movies or something where it's, give me what I want or I'll kill the hostages. No, it's not that. It's them saying, hey, we've got Jews here in these areas. You come and strike us. There's a chance that you're going to hit one of them. That's what it's about. That's why they do it. That is the best way to actually get leverage. So it's no surprise that they've done that. And that also means, by the way, that they have an incentive to keep them alive.
Yeah, they move them all into hospitals and etc. It's just like that one German
they need
Jew
them to
lady.
be alive to actually get leverage out of them.
Yeah, that one German Jew lady who they proclaimed to be like the first casualty of the war, like German-born Jewish Israeli citizen who went to that fucking dumb rave in the middle of the fucking desert. And by the way, if you go to a fucking rave to celebrate in the middle of a fucking contested zone, yeah, you deserve to be fucking shot. By the way, that's dumb. But yeah, no, like that one that they claimed to be the first casualty, she was actually later her mother was contacted by the media, and her mother said, "Hey, look, no, she's contacted me. She's in a hospital in Gaza, and she's fine. She's just in that hospital as a containment area." And why are they putting her in a hospital? Oh, so they don't fucking bomb the hospital.
Exactly.
Hasn't stopped them with other ones, though.
So this is where, Israel for years accused Hamas of deliberately firing rockets from places like hospitals, because they say that they're using sick people or hospitals or other Palestinians as human shields.
That's not even how their missile. That's not how their missile doctrine works. They fucking move around, set up, shoot, pack it up, move it, set up, shoot. You can't be in one static location when using Scuds.
Right. I mean, well, also just because once they pinpoint your location, they go after you. So you have to constantly move.
Hospital or not?
Yeah, but the other thing is, like, in the event where, Hamas has turned out to be near a hospital or near a school or whatever it is, well, there's only one place more densely... Yeah, there's one place more densely populated in the world than Gaza, and that's Hong Kong. Nowhere else is as densely populated. You've got $1.1 million just crammed into this tiny little sliver on the outskirts of Israel. That's it. The entire population of Gaza is concentrated inside that. So obviously all of these things like schools, hospitals are just always going to be in close proximity. So anyway, it looks like we've got around 10,000 Australians in Israel. There's also roughly...
Big asterisks on that one.
Okay, well, I also read that we've got around 1,000 Australians. Yeah, we need to put quotes around these in Gaza as well, and I'd still put quotes on around those too.
Yep.
So
Yeah, no,
we've got
I heard an interview from the ABC today from two women who got off that charter flight done by Qantas to London. And one of them was definitely obviously an Australian woman. She was like, "I'm so grateful. I was just there on holiday to go see like, religious sites and all of this happened so fast and I'm actually very grateful to get out." And I was like, "Okay, that's the Australian woman." And then I hear another like Australian accent. It's just like, "Oh God, the suffering. You wouldn't know. Like only us people would know about this suffering. It's so terrible. Oh my God!" And the flight was so cramped, and everyone was crying and terrified. And I'm just like, "Oh my God, you got a yenta."
Yeah. So I mean, we have had like one Australian Israeli killed at the kibbutz, I believe, was the first Australian killed in the conflict, as they put it. But yeah, look, there are a number of repatriation flights being handled by Virgin and Qantas at the moment. The current like Australian government advice, travel advice, is like basically anyone near the conflict should get on a commercial flight and just get the fuck out of Israel or Gaza.
Yep.
Probably good advice. Yeah. Don't come here though. All right. Don't come here. If you're a Jew, go to a different place in Israel. Go to a place far away from the occupied territories. Is where I would
go to Iran. I want to see what happens.
Or do that.
Strictly for academic purposes. I want to see what happens if you do that.
Yeah, for research purposes only.
Or maybe Pakistan. I want to see if Mike's speech, Mike's little like his little get up or shtick was true. Oh man.
Oh, I think you dropped out for a second there.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
I was gonna say like maybe Pakistan. I want to see if Mike Pianovich's little stick about total Umar war was true.
Oh man, I'm so behind on Tedious and Strike and Mike actually at the moment because I went on holiday. I barely had any time to listen to podcasts, so I'm like a month behind on everything. I'm trying to catch up. I've been reading the Telegram posts and everything though. So anyway, we're an Australian podcast. We're going to talk about the Australian reaction and consequences here. So, in terms of what's happening at home, we've had a lot of pro-Palestine rallies that happen. Look, we talked about this on the Race to Decides actually, but you had that one where you had a bunch of lebs. I'm sure there were lebs chanting "Gas the Jews" over at the Opera House. So that was, it was a pro-Palestine rally, but it was also a rally against the government's decision to light up the Opera House blue and white, colors of the Israeli flag. And so, look, obviously, like Andrew Bolt did like a whole 10-minute segment on this. The guy thrown under the bus by the Jewish community is still taking every opportunity he can to come out and bat for them. And just talking about how, if we have a problem with racism in this country, that it is absolutely with anti-Semitism and it needs to be condemned in the strongest possible terms. And John Howard came out and said that Albanese's conduct here has been disgraceful because of a lack of bipartisanship on the issue. I'm like, what are you talking about? He came out, he condemned it. He said that Australia's full support is with Israel. So did Penny Wong. He went to a fucking synagogue and put on a kippah on Wednesday. And he's also turned out to vigils. I'm not sure what else he could have done. So, for example, the synagogue, they're saying that he should have gone there that night and met with members of the Jewish community that night. It's like, guys, he's the Prime Minister. He does have a busy schedule. And you also had a referendum coming up as well, for God's sake. Have you not considered any of this kind of stuff? But you see, supporting Israel and condemning its enemies, nothing else, absolutely nothing else can take priority when it comes to conservatives. You know, this is where their political correctness is at its worst.
They didn't light up the lights on the Sydney Opera House and the MCG and all these various other structures, including the community building in Perth. They didn't light up the lights to show that they had some tacit support for Israel. They lit up those lights to remind you who was in charge. That's a paraphrasing.
Well, I mean, it really was both, wasn't it? You know, I mean, if it wasn't for that purpose, it nonetheless should remind you that these are the people who are in charge. You know, it's like the Voltaire quote. You want to find out who rules over you, see who you can't criticize.
Explain to me why in the ever-loving fuck would Australia care about some travesty going on in a nation of 10 million people? Why? Do we fucking care about the fucking, like, you know, the Botswanian fucking, or the fucking Rohingyas and etc. to the same degree? Do we care about some skirmishes going on in Nepal, or like the fucking random border wars that happen between Pakistan and India? No. Well, then why this? Explain to me why.
Right, and I mean, the Conservatives will accuse the Labour Party of being obsessed with the Israel-Palestine question. What? Now, the latest criticism of that stemmed from the ALP's national conference, where, you know, supposedly you had the Corbynite left ascendant, and then bringing this issue back to the fore here. It was one thing that they had on the agenda of the conference, one thing, and there was only one type of media out there that was attacking that, and that was the conservative media. The Australian, Sky News, the rest of the Murdoch press was going on about this. It's like, hold on, who has the obsession here? You're the ones who gave it all this media coverage. And now you're the ones attacking Albo for just not being pro-Jew enough. You know, it really is
it's a what the fuck situation.
It is just like, you know, who's going to be the first person to stop clapping for Stalin? It is so much like that. You know, like when Rand Paul didn't clap enthusiastically enough one time during the 29 standing ovations that Bibi got addressing Congress. You can never be pro-Jew enough when it comes to conservatives. So I think, though, that they are actually somewhat afraid of that critique. Like, remember we were talking to Rand about how they've been very successful at flushing out the pro-Palestine sentiment among left-wing groups like Socialist Alternative, for example. So, you know, that's why, like, they have actually scared them to an extent to be associated with, you know, the Corbynite left and promoting some kind of strange form of left-wing anti-Semitism, I guess you could call it. So they respond in kind. And Albo is, he's very, very keen to be seen as pro-Israel, as pro-Jew as he possibly can. Now, what's funny, though, is that, okay, they may have neutered the left in that way, but you know who they haven't? Is Arabs, is Muslims. You know, and their politics are basically, you know, you can't really categorize them other than they're Muslims, okay? And their politics are ethnic and religious, okay? They are pro-Arab, they are pro-Palestine, they are pro-Muslim. And
they are the Ummah, and they are the ones.
Right, and I mean, look, this is why I say, you know, don't get too excited about them yelling out Gaza Jews or whatever. This is still, these are foreigners.
You're not invited to that party.
Yeah, bringing their ethnic politics and conflicts to our shores. You know, we still shouldn't have it. But yeah, they are never ever successful at defeating that kind of anti-Israel sentiment or anti-Semitism, if you want to call it that, anti-Zionism, etc.
Oh rabbi, your golem has turned against you.
Well, yeah, okay, and that's what I was going to say. I mean,
only after it had finished beating the ever-loving fuck out of the fucking the village peasants.
Right. I mean, and that is obviously the irony that exists for the Jewish community is, you're the ones who've been telling us to invite all of these people over to Australia and the rest of the West for so long. Oh, hold on, but these people don't like you. And that's why, someone like Mark Liebler, as we covered on XYZ Live, at first was very, very supportive of multiculturalism, and then he started to oppose it because he saw it as dangerous for Jews. Basically because you had too many anti-Semites coming over.
Damn. Rest of the world pissed at you too, not just me?
So look, Chris Minns, obviously condemned this. So did Albo. And they still came under attack for not condemning it enough. The police have said that they've been issued with additional powers to break up pro-Palestinian protests. The organisers of these protests said that that's not going to faze them, and I don't think it has, because they have continued to attract hundreds, sometimes thousands of people to these rallies. So they're being supported. There's even some where I've seen them have signs that say Jews in solidarity with Palestinians. There are some of those, not many though. So I don't think things have gotten too out of control though, in terms of violence and stuff. I mean, there was that car that was running red lights and firing fireworks, like in the colours of the Palestinian flag. There's stuff like that happening. But, that's right, I got really sidetracked there. The one thing I was going to mention in terms of the Jewish reaction was that first protest at the Opera House, police actually issued a statement telling Jews not to turn up. Do you remember that? Now,
well, in that case, I imagine it was for their safety.
Of course it was. What else would it have been? And yeah, I mean, look, the type of person who was most likely to commit an act of violence against a Jew in Australia is obviously going to be an Arab, okay? He's going to be a Muslim. He's going to be someone with, that amount of grievance against them. Even though we're repeatedly told that the most violent and threatening group in this country are actually white nationalists, okay? No, it's just like when we've covered like what were authentic cases of anti-Semitism. For example, that guy who got a Jewish student to kiss his shoe, an Arab Muslim. It's not white people who are out there doing this, okay? So when you have these genuine security threats that are racial or cultural in their basis, it is never involving whites, unless we're the victim.
Trust me, there's a lot more instances of someone screaming Yehudi than there is someone screaming Juden right now.
Yeah, so the Jewish community reacted very angrily to that, because they're saying, well, look, you're kind of taking away our right to free expression. And look, I'd say the simple fact of the matter was they couldn't get enough police out there to kind of keep the crowd separate, and they'd probably both be wanting to go at each other here. So,
oh yeah,
that's really the issue. Now,
the only problem is every time I've seen they've actually allowed Jews to counter-protest these things, they tend to get their shit rocked.
Shit, as in they get attacked.
Yeah, they tend to get fucking just like absolutely the shit kicked out of them. They're bloodthirsty people. They're not soldierly people.
Yeah, and Arabs are pretty bloodthirsty themselves. Okay, I'm still very careful, not to say I'm all in with this Palestinian side or whatever. No, because that would mean being all in with people who are foreign to this country and are still demographically replacing my people in my country. So I'm sorry, I can't go all the way there.
We'll say it again, I'll say it again. I support them so long as they're causing problems for my enemy. Outside of that, I don't give a shit. Get the fuck out of my country.
Right. Now, look, there was a vigil. I think it was it yesterday? It was on the weekend anyway. It was a Sydney vigil, and you had around 7,000 people who turned up for it. Many of which were Jewish, so they were out there waving Israeli flags, putting Jewish music on. And as far as I know, that event was incident-free. So, there weren't really any clashes or anything like that. Now, ASIO, Mark Burgess, has issued a warning to the general public about tensions getting too high, but he has not said that the terror threat and therefore the security rating is higher. So, there's not a greater chance of terrorist attacks happening. Therefore, there's no need to elevate the current security risk that exists in Australia.
Anti-Semitism.
Well, yeah. So what he means is he's saying that, like, okay, there's an increased risk of like kind of random acts of violence against Jews, but there's not an increased threat of terrorism, like Islamic bombing or whatever it might be. Now, again, the Jewish community doesn't like this because they're saying, okay, surely you should have to consider that to be a security threat if there's an increased threat of violence against Jews. He did more or less say that, though, and he's just saying he's urging caution right now. He did basically say, be careful where you go, who you talk with, what you say in public, all that kind of stuff, because tensions are very, very high right now, as they are all over the world, because just about every country has got some Arab diaspora or Jewish diaspora among the population. And yeah.
Thank you,
right.
NGOs. Thank you, B'nai B'rith.
Yeah. And, where is it? Wish my prep was better organized here. But I know that Albo did say that... damn it, where is it? Albo basically said that multiculturalism only works when you don't have opposing groups making threats against each other in public. Okay, I'm paraphrasing because I can't find the quote here.
When does that ever happen? When? It doesn't.
Well,
that is the point of multiculturalism. That's the fun part of multiculturalism. Ethnic threats.
Right. So, I mean, the
I
fact
don't
that
do
we
them,
see
but I see other people do.
public chanting of "gas the Jews" and everything is obviously brought about by an incident that inflames tensions. Of course, that's true. But isn't it also an indication that, say, these two groups, that is, Arabs and Jews, did not like each other from the beginning? Just because they say are only making this stuff publicly heard now does not mean that those tensions, those resentments, that animosity did not exist before. Of course it did. And further, the implication of saying that like it'll only work if, well, how do you impose that condition? How do you make it so that there are not public threats of one group against another? Well, it has to be an authoritarian state.
Turbo illegal.
Right? It has to be authoritarianism. We were talking about Singapore before, who have, basically a soft authoritarian state because they have rival ethnic groups there. And they have to have a heavy hand of government to ensure that those ethnic groups aren't violent against each other.
The most important thing on a Singaporean document isn't your tax status, isn't your sex, isn't, how many dicks you like up your ass. It's your race.
At the end of the day, it is.
Yep.
And if multiculturalism was so natural and so harmonious, then you wouldn't need the heavy hand of the state to impose it and to ensure that its components are fighting against each other all the time. How can you tell me multiculturalism is natural if that's what you have to do?
But because diversity is a strength and differing opinions and there's an ethnic food and strip malls and more strip malls and more grey consumer class and loans from all these fast reproducing people in their homelands, and we're actually kind of running a death cult over here.
Right. Okay, now, So this article, in terms of the Australian Jewish and Israeli response to it, was the Australia-Israel Jewish Affairs Council, AJAC, has made a submission to the government concerning their multicultural framework. And they said that multiculturalism is sustainable when groups are not permitted to openly express unabated hate towards another.
But that's just them being their true selves. That's the truest part of their cultures. Ethnic hatred.
Right, okay, but in terms of the practicality of it, like, what do they want governments to do? So they said, well, they want state and federal governments that they should consider taking greater efforts to enforce their existing laws, while also rethinking elements of their approach to issues of public order under the mantle of Australian multiculturalism. Okay, so when they say existing laws, they're talking about hate speech laws. They're talking about 18C, the myriad of state and territory laws that also exist that restrict speech. And they're talking about police powers. They're saying go arrest them, you know? So, like, all of these people chanting "Gas the Jews" or whatever, they just want them all thrown in jail.
Can that go both ways?
Right, well, I mean, it's not like they don't say things like that, like expel or kill the Arab enemy, you know.
Dude, fucking on Friday, like fucking literally, like if you looked up Israel versus Palestine, it was all these Australian Jewish accounts basically calling for straight up genocide overseas and domestically.
Yes. Well,
are they going to jail? If I said that about them, I'll be going to fucking jail.
We are talking about the forced evacuation of an entire population in Gaza happening right now. That looks like genocide to me. You don't have to kill people, remember, for a genocide. It can simply be about displacement.
Deportation works too. Deportation.
Yeah, deportation or forced evacuation. All of these things would constitute genocide if done on a large enough scale. And, I mean, how large do you want it to be? We're talking about over 1 million people in an entire area being shipped out. Looks like a genocide to me.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Okay. And last thing to say on this in terms of the Australian response or consequences for Australians is, well, it looks like our petrol prices are going to go up again because of this.
Fuck.
Whenever there's anything, shifty going on in the Middle East, well, we always kind of end up paying more at the Bowser for it. Damn. Okay.
It's already fucking expensive enough.
Let's get on to the stories that are not to do with The Voice or to do with Israel and Gaza, because there were some. So let's talk about climate and energy. Now, believe it or not, the Albanese government have actually secured a win that I believe anyway is good news. So there was an action taken against the federal government and also I think it was 2 resources companies as well. This action was taken by the Environment Council of Central Queensland. So, as you can imagine, that is an environmental NGO, and their primary source of fighting for climate change is lawfare. Bringing governments to court and saying, you're not allowed to open this new coal mine or whatever it might be. So, as you can imagine, this was to do with the opening of 2 coal mines in Queensland. And they basically said that the government had no right to grant permission to the coal companies to open these plants. So this was going through court for the past couple of years, and they have ruled, which court was this? The federal court. They have ruled that actually, yes, the government does have the power under existing regulation and law to grant permission for new plants to be opened. Now, this NGO argued that they had to take into consideration the carbon footprint that would have affected plants, animals in places, in the surrounding environment. Because, this is how you win these lawfare cases. Existing legislation does say that, governments, companies have to, they have to take into account things like environmental degradation. And if you can sufficiently prove...
Direct chemical damage. It's for like dumping fucking chemical waste or dumping fucking mining byproduct into a river or some shit like that. It's not for some nebulous fucking miasma of something that it's all in the air, you don't even know it kind of deal.
Exactly. Yes, yeah, you explain that better than I did. We do, obviously we have environmental regulations saying you can't fuck up your surrounding environment. And everyone agrees with that, okay? I don't think anyone, unless you're an ANCAP or something, thinks that is wrong. But yeah, when it comes to a carbon footprint, you're talking about just simply emissions that go off into the general atmosphere. You're not talking about the immediate surroundings of that plant. And the court agreed here and said, no, you can't use that as a way of arguing environmental degradation. And so therefore the government is within its power to say, yes, you can open these plants. So, yeah, believe it or not, they actually...
another shot, they'll take it.
Yeah. So this was actually a win against the radical environmental movement, and it was won by the Federal Labor Party. Amazing. Okay, so water prices are said to increase by around 15% in Queensland over the next couple of years. And that's to cover the cost of a new desalination plant that they're estimating will actually cost up to $8 billion. Now, not that I know a hell of a lot about this stuff, but I'm generally of the opinion that when it comes to purifying water, supplying a good drinking supply of water to a population, desalination is one of the best ways, I think. I know you think they're nosy, but as far as I can see, that's one of the most cost-effective ways.
It's very energy. It consumes a lot of energy doing it, but it's one of those things that if you want to have like coastal cities up and down like a coast, they don't necessarily have river deltas running into them. That's the best way.
Right, and it also, in terms of like the salinity of the surrounding ocean or water, it doesn't really have much effect either.
Because where does the water go back to at the end of the day? Yeah, you end up with brine ponds that get dumped into the ocean, which increase patches of salinity for a little bit. But you know what dissolves really well in water?
Salt.
Yeah. And also, like, you piss, you flush the toilet, where the fuck does it go? You fucking, you spray water on your grass, give the fucking the underground table a little bit, where does it go? Oh, it goes back into the fucking ocean.
Yeah. Well, all water has like passed through someone's bladder at some stage, look, this is what I was going to get on to.
You have drank dinosaur piss. Guaranteed. 100%.
But the Palaszczuk government has rejected using recycled water to basically kind of supplement the price of this desalination plant. So that's a shame because a lot of people, because when we talk about recycled water, we're talking about like stuff that comes from a sewerage plant or something.
Yeah.
That's what they say here. Or because it's a bit of a silly term, recycled water. All water is recycled. Like, yes, no question about it. But when you do hear that term, recycled water, they're actually talking about waste fluid that is treated and turned into drinking water later.
Yeah.
And they're saying, no, they're not going to do it.
It is a bit more involved. Practical Engineering has a good video on both sources of water. Honestly, recycled water, so long as it's done within the traditional methods of recycling, which is like several stagnation tanks and then several chemical treatment tanks and then sedimentarian, like starting off with a sedimentary tank, like that's fine, that works. It's just a bit longer and less high volume flow than desal. It's less energy dense though. You're spending a lower amount of energy for every like kilogram of water you're getting out of that.
Right. But yeah, I mean, if that would have the potential to help keep people's water prices down as they pay for this desalination plant, I wouldn't really see any issue with it. And I know that they do use recycled water to an extent in Queensland. That was introduced by Peter Beattie in the early aughts, I think, whenever Peter Beattie was around.
Yeah, recycled water is fine.
Yeah,
like it's like a flow rate issue. Like it costs less per kilogram, but like for like the same size plant, you get like I think it's like 40%. It's still 40%'s a good fucking margin.
Right. Okay,
especially
and last story we've got on climate and energy is concerning that figure that Chris Bowen likes to trot out, that replacing each coal-fired station with a nuclear station would cost $387 billion. Remember that claim that he put out there?
Fuck me, that's retarded.
We've got a senior US official, or former US official, has come out questioning that. So this is Rita Baranwal. So she's a former assistant secretary for nuclear energy at the US Department of Energy, and also the senior vice president of Westinghouse. Also claims that she has 3 engineering degrees, and said that those numbers, those numbers that Chris Bowen has put out just do not add up. So she said that Westinghouse has its own small modular nuclear reactor, and that cost approximately $1 billion, or in Australian dollars, $1.58 billion. So that's a 300 megawatt facility, which we use to supplement renewable energy as a baseload generator. Factoring in additional costs for transmission upgrades, nuclear power could be a significant contributor to supporting renewables for far less than $387 billion.
So what the shot is there, and something they have done in the US, not so much anymore, but like in the 70s and 80s they did this. They created this system that could replace the furnace boiler in a standard traditional coal-fired plant with the nuclear reactor and heat exchange module. So, oddly enough, one of the most expensive things in a nuclear reactor isn't the fucking reactor itself. It's the giant series of turbines and pumps you have to put in place to get the steam, the heated or expanded water to the turbine, cool it, and then return it. Coal-fired power plants already have all that infrastructure. It's just one component you have to change out.
Right. And, I mean, look, you don't just have to take her word for it. You know, there's numerous sources out there that show that Bowen's numbers just did not add up.
Yeah, it was, and he's saying, like, oh, it was the most expensive per fucking watt hour. And I'm just like, are you fucking retarded?
Yeah.
And then obviously, like, same with these Greens people all the fucking times, and Planet of the Humans harped on this quite a lot. When they put in their analysis, they will often refuse to include the cradle-to-grave costs of a green energy project, as in manufacture, use, and then final decommissioning on one side of the equation, but make sure to definitely include it on the other, which, you know, like, cradle-to-grave is one of the it's the analysis you put together when you're designing infrastructure as an engineer. It's the thing.
Yep. Okay. So just quickly on the economy, we really don't have much here other than that. Peter Costello, who is the chair of the Future Fund, so that is basically the government body that regulates superannuation in Australia.
Yep.
He's stepping down, so he's been in that role since 2014. You also had other big names in that role previously, like David Gonski. You all remember the Gonski Review into education in Australia. So, well, you're going to get a woman. So this woman called Patricia Cross, she's a board member on the Future Fund. She is widely tipped to be the successor because Jim Chalmers had said in the past that he would prefer the future fund be led by a woman. So, just like for the Reserve Bank, they're tipping a woman to come in here because we've always got to keep breaking that glass ceiling, don't we?
Have you ever let a woman deal with finances in the household?
Hey, man.
I can tell you, it's a bad idea.
In my house, as in when I was a kid, my mum handled the finances because my dad was hopeless at it. So I don't know if that's
because
always
he's Irish.
My mum's Irish too, so I don't know.
Oh no! My anecdotal evidence has been disproven by anecdotal evidence. I must take the L.
Yeah,
just be back in a second. I'm gonna go get another can of fucking Mortine because that fucking fly is back, and it sounds like that fucking dreamable guy that like jacks off on camera.
Okay, go ahead. I'll just lead into the next story. But yeah, look, I don't know. Maybe, but I have to admit, I hadn't not even heard of Patricia Cross. The only person I knew from the Future Fund was Peter Costello. I knew the leader of it. That was it. So the only reason I'm mentioning this story is just to say, why is it every time we have to have these token picks? Every single time. We just did it for the Reserve Bank. Why have we got another one here? Anyway, so on to crime news. We got more coverage of the notorious Unit 18, which is where you had people on juvenile prison sentences who were being housed in Banksia Hill in WA, which is our juvenile detention centre, sent to Casuarina prison, which is the highest security adult prison that we've got. Probably our most notorious prison, I guess you could call it. Well, we actually just had an attempted suicide there the other day. So if you thought I was going to talk more about the attacks on staff, well, not this time, although I guarantee there will be more. So
it's attacks on inmates.
Yeah. So it was a 16-year-old boy who was found in the early hours of last Thursday, unresponsive in his cell, and he is in a critical condition in hospital right now. So Roger Cook, our new Premier, did a press conference not long after this, and he has really come under fire for referring to Unit 18 as a necessary evil, while at the same time assuring us. Well, that's the thing. I'm like, did you? I would say the word necessary is very apt. I don't know if you need to call it an evil, though. It's absolutely necessary.
It's not fucking evil. Like, and by the way, it's not an attempted suicide. I had a conversation on Sunday with a CO. It's not an attempted suicide. Basically, he got fucking choked and strangled and was unconscious. And they're like, oh my god, look, he tried to like strangle himself in his own little like bed frame thing. No,
so was it another detainee who did it?
It was another fucking detainee from the same fucking unit. It was a fucking half-caste kid who pissed off another half-caste kid and basically put a target on his back.
They're pretty much all half-castes, I guarantee.
They're all fucking half-castes in there, yes. They're all little feral animals. They are all little feral fucking animals in there, and that's why they're there.
Yeah, and that is why he's referring to it as a necessary evil, because they don't have the resources to deal with them at Banksia. Prison officers, as opposed to youth justice officers, are able to carry handcuffs, batons, capsicum spray, all the stuff that youth custodial officers are not allowed to carry. So,
I've got an anecdote because, you know, like I'm talking to some relatively new COs, but they've been talking to some like, you know, the more of the grizzled hardened veterans who are just going to be like, you know, COs until they are basically forced to retire. The grizzled hardened veterans of Casuarina don't want to deal with Unit 8. Oh, Unit 18, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want to deal with them because they are worse than the adults.
Yeah. You think about it, in many ways they are, because, look, they tend to be 17, 18-year-olds, so they're pretty much fully grown adults. So they would actually be physically stronger than a lot of the adult population. Also, at that age, you tend to be more psycho. You know what I mean? Peak of criminality is in your late teens and early 20s.
Yeah, no, I've literally had it explained to me. They've got like, these, 25 through to 32-year-olds in the adult prison who are like lifelong sociopathic career, like psychopathic career criminals and murderers. And like just cold-blooded fucking, like, some of them gangland, some of them just straight drugs, some of them just like homeless fucking sociopaths who like to target and beat people to death in the street. The only problem is those people are comparatively more well-adjusted than these kids, and I barely call them kids. That's me being generous. The thing is,
Yeah.
what's going to happen with all these fucking inmates in fucking Unit 18 is they're going to be let out in the streets, they're going to fuck around with the wrong sociopath, and they're gonna be killed. That's their future.
Oh, I've no doubt that they are safer in Unit 18. That's probably the safest place they could be,
Yeah.
and you can argue if that is necessary or not. But yeah.
You want to make them safer,
Okay.
put them in isolation, put them in ISO. And this was actually one of the things that was saying, like, we can't put them in ISO because that'll be a human rights violation. We can't keep them away from each other and not let them socialize because that's a fucking violation. Only problem is, when we let them socialize, they do one of two things: try to kill each other, or try to conspire to kill fucking COs.
Right, and look, the government is not doing a good job at getting this message across. Even though some of the rhetoric from Roger Cook and I'll even say from Mark McGowan was good in terms of just saying, no, these are criminals and they're really, really serious offenders and they attack staff. Like, that means we need a heavy hand here. But they're still not effectively executing that message, I don't think. And one of the reasons for that is because they keep announcing reviews. So, for example, they have a review right now on infrastructure, which is designed to inform the government on the type of facilities that need to be constructed or modified or repaired or whatever. Well, if you're doing that, isn't the implication that you're running a shit system if you have to constantly be reviewing everything? And Roger Cook is saying at the same time that some of those changes are already being implemented. Now, the Corrective Services Minister said that the high number of prior suicide attempts at the facility at Unit 18 was because of an affected cohort of children and not the centre's conditions. Well, that's absolutely true. I mean,
They get bullied and threatened into suicide.
Right, but I mean, why is it though that you didn't actually see these same patterns of behaviour happen in other units at Casuarina Prison? It's only this Unit 18 because they have collected the worst of the worst juvenile offenders in the state and put them into one unit.
Yep.
That's why. So yeah, you can't say that's because of Casuarina's conditions because this just wasn't happening in the other units.
Look at these cesspool. Look at the cesspool that I've created of fucking vicious little animals. And why are they acting like vicious little animals?
That's exactly what they are. Okay, so we know that they're basically planning to wholesale decriminalize drugs, including the most deadly drugs in the ACT, our most POSed jurisdiction. But later this week, the Minns government in New South Wales is going to introduce a bill that is not as far-reaching as that in the ACT, but nonetheless is going to give power to police to issue 2 on-the-spot fines of $400, or if you've gotten either fine 1 or fine 2, you can choose to go to a diversionary program. That usually just means you go to some bloody slideshow presentation where they tell you, it's like Mr. Mackey saying drugs are bad. Okay.
And then you proceed to sell drugs to the people in there.
So the first 2 times that you get caught, you can actually you either pay the fine or you just go to the program. Most people will go to the program, They'd rather do that than spend $400. So
That's
it would only be
worth of fucking meth.
It would only be on the third event where you have to pay the fine and where you would have a criminal record recorded against you. So this is not going as far as the ACT. In the ACT, the fines basically just keep going. And I think in Still, you do have the choice also of the diversionary programs, but it doesn't really matter how many times you get caught, as long as it's for possession, you won't get a criminal record. So the Min's government is not quite going that far. Which
Message to all ACT meth heads. Make sure to distribute your meth into smaller baggies and don't carry too many of them around at once.
Yeah, and don't carry a lot of money with you either, because then you look like a dealer. So, yeah.
Well, they don't have a lot of money because they've already bought the meth. And, oh, by the way, ACT, welcome to a wave of every fucking state's meth heads coming over there.
Oh, man, that wouldn't be so bad. I could do with getting rid of some of our meth heads here in the meth-no state.
The meth-no state has many refugees for you.
Yes.
No, I'm expecting, I'm not going to be happy about this or proud about this, but I am going to be expecting, lips perched, to see videos of public servants getting their absolute shit fucking rocked by a meth head who's been up for 10 days straight.
Yeah. Don't know if I've had to deal with that before, but anyway. But look, these changes, though, are similar in that those two on-the-spot fines or the going to the diversionary program, that still applies for, like, heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, the hard, heavy drugs. You still won't get a criminal record until your third time getting caught. Which, I don't know. I think you should have the book thrown at you if you're caught with any of those. The harder the drug, it should be a harder punishment. But anyway.
Yes.
Okay. So in Queensland, we got another domino falling in terms of outlawing extremist symbols. So hate symbols, as they call them, like Nazi flags, and tattoos. So they're including like stuff that's actually just displayed on your body, will be illegal in Queensland. So these laws were actually just passed by the Parliament. And remember, they only have one House of Parliament in Queensland. So, there's no Senate, there's no House of Review. So that means these laws will come into effect very, very soon. It says that those who display, distribute, or publish a banned symbol and cause others to feel harassed or offended could face up to 6 months in jail. So how about that? You've got to meet two criteria here. It's not just the display of the symbol. You've got to actually cause hurt to someone.
Well, there we go.
So
they'll find some random bystander and be like, a police officer will be like, did this person cause you hurt? And they'll find one that says yes eventually. Didn't they do that with fucking
Jewish groups
Jimbo?
Are experts at that. Yeah, so the laws in Victoria, as far as I'm aware, don't extend to tattoos.
Yeah,
but
we went over that. Like, it wasn't illegal. He knew the laws, but the police were still fishing around for did this person threaten you? Did this person cause you dismay? Trying to fish for something else. And luckily enough, the people were like, no, fuck off. I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, because they need that second element. Yeah, but I think that's why they specifically included tattoos in this legislation, because they know about people like Jimbo and they want to make that stuff illegal as well. Which basically means, you would have to cover it up in some way. So, yeah.
An even bigger second swastika.
Oh, and it also... Oh, wait, I'll read... Here's another element here. So the laws also increase punishment by creating a circumstance of aggravation for people who commit crimes motivated by hatred or contempt based on characteristics like race, gender, religion, or sexuality that could capture performing a Nazi salute in public. So it's not just symbols. It is other forms of behavior that result in aggravating people on the basis of race, gender, religion, sexuality, etc.
Oh no, my abnormally tall friend Kyle shall remain ever lost.
Yeah. So they have been careful to make this legislation very broad-ranging and, capture all those naughty things. So I always think of Chung Li from Street Fighter when I hear about this woman, but Cheng Li or Lei, whatever the hell.
Oh, the spy.
The
femme
spy
fatale.
has actually been returned to Australia. Now,
China, I hope you got
spent...
a real fucking good deal. I hope you got a real fucking good deal, because you just sent a message to every single fucking liberal dissident in your country that you are soft when it comes to spies. Execute one by flat cannon next time. See how that goes.
Yeah, so this so-called Australian is back in Australia, and we have been diplomatically negotiating with China for, I believe, actually about 3 years now to negotiate her release. So she was arrested and accused of supplying state secrets overseas in 2020. She has rejected that. She was on those charges, but I don't think she was ever actually brought to trial as a result.
No, they don't bother doing that over there.
No.
It literally, when it comes to like Chinese state police, like they're just like they don't do the rigmarole. It's like, we know you fucking did this. You're coming with us. Fuck off. Take that however you want.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I agree with that. I do. I still believe in due process and everything. But yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean that we had to take such a big interest here. And this is the problem with fucking being a civnat. It's like, anyone who has Australian citizenship under any circumstances, wherever they might live, however long they've been in Australia or whatever, we have to be, just as concerned about them as any other Australian, anyone else with Australian citizenship. You know?
Civic nationalism is the nationalism of administration. It's not the nationalism of a people or a culture or a race or even fucking general ideology. It's the administration of a bureaucrat. It's that. That's it. I guarantee that she was a fucking spy. I guarantee to you. And
so that's the end result here. We've imported a Chinese spy. That's all we've ended up with. Yes, we did.
We imported a Chinese spy to cover for whatever Western intelligence organization flipped her.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, if you're a foreign intelligence organization, you're flipping people in another country to go do work for you, what is your primary goal when they do get captured? Make sure you do actually make good by them. Or at least try to, because otherwise, if you don't, and you allow the state to execute them, well, good luck getting any more fucking cunts to flip for you.
Right, of course.
Yeah, so it was probably some American operation, because I don't think we're all that concerned with fucking around with the state effects of China. So we were probably asked by the Americans to go pick this fucking bitch up because she has citizenship in our country. And, so I imagine some United States intelligence organization got some information from her that they legally shouldn't have, and now we're taking her in, and we probably had to give China a good slice of the fucking pie of something, of what, we probably will never know, to do this, because in doing this, they've opened themselves up to more flipping of citizens.
Right, okay. Okay, so the decision by the federal government to block Qatar Airways from having additional flights in Australia should be immediately reviewed, and that they were the findings of a parliamentary committee. So this was kind of cobbled together by crossbenchers and members of the coalition who have just said that we've had a review, and we say you should have another review into why you made this decision. It's fucking stupid. So this was actually labelled as a political stunt by Catherine King. I think I agree. Like, why would you form a committee to do a review to just advocate for another review? It's just circular bullshit that's not going to lead anywhere. We just need to forget about it. We need to worry about the outsourcing that's being done in the airline industry in Australia. We need to make sure that Optus can't just sack workers en masse like they did before. And yeah, look, if we need a little bit more competition here, well, that's a matter for the competition watchdog and the other regulators. Okay, we don't need more bloody government reviews and everything. Okay, so Papua New Guinea. So in Papua New Guinea, in Port Moresby, we've got around 70 refugees there who intended to enter Australia. So, this is one of the places where we have our offshore processing. Now, PNG's migration officials have said that Australia is not keeping up its end of the bargain. Now, this originally was negotiated between the Morrison government and PNG. So this was basically, in a nutshell, how much money we give to Papua New Guinea in return for them handling some of our offshore processing. Now,
the
as we've said before here, yeah, that's what it is. And I mean, like, for example, this is not specifically part of those negotiations and that deal, but their internet is entirely paid for by Australia. Yeah. They have the NBN in PNG, believe it or not, but it is all paid for and built by us. So Papua New Guinea is a state of Torres Strait Islanders, effectively. That's kind of who genetically they are very much like, which would explain why they are cannibals. And yes, cannibalism is still going on. But apparently, migration officials in PNG are saying that Australia has outstanding invoices with tens of millions of dollars owed to service providers looking after those refugees. Hear that? Tens of millions of dollars. We're talking about the housing of 70 refugees. So we've got figures outstanding of the tens of millions. That's how much bribe money we need to give this failed state just to look after 70 refugees for us.
Finger on the scale there, Pega?
Gives you an idea of the bribery that we do just to fucking pay. And this is why, at the end of the day, it's I agree with the Greens for the wrong reasons here. We shouldn't have this offshore processing or whatever. We should just say, no, get out. You're not coming here. That's it. Turn your boat around, and if you sink on the way, not our problem. That's what we should really do. Then you would see an end to people smuggling. I guarantee you'd see an end to it then.
Yeah, just don't give them a heart.
So,
tell them fuck off.
We've got even more information about just what Jacinta Allan knew. Remember, she's the new Premier of Victoria. In her time as Transport and Infrastructure Minister. She was the minister, therefore, who was in charge of the 2026 Commonwealth Games that went on to be cancelled. So, what has been cited by the Australian was a 20-page report called the Games Organising Committee Report. And this was essentially a rescue package that they had recommended. And this was back on the 15th of April this year. So that is actually 2 months before she gave an address to Parliament, State Parliament, saying that the Commonwealth Games was showing tremendous progress. All right. However, in this report, this was recommending a number of desperate measures in an attempt to save the games and to keep the prices down and, prevent all of the cost blowouts that we know about now. So, what do we got here? So there were recommendations made to save money, which included abandoning Gippsland entirely, not holding the games there at all, shifting a range of sports such as track cycling and aquatics to Melbourne, and dropping other sports entirely, such as golf. And it said that could have saved the Victorian government up to $168 million. And yeah, therefore, maybe it could have saved it in the long term. 2 months after she had been given that report, which obviously showed that they were in a lot of trouble, she actually made an address saying that they had made tremendous progress on the Commonwealth Games.
Did you?
So,
really?
And this isn't the first bit of information of this kind that we've found here. So, in other words, Jacinta Allan was knowingly misleading the Parliament and the Victorian people into not only thinking that the Commonwealth Games were going to still occur, but that everything was fine. Everything was on track, no cost blowouts, everything was just going to run smoothly, even though that we knew for many months beforehand that it was not going that way at all.
I love deceiving the public for an election, then fucking pulling the rug out from them as soon as they voted for you because you're going to actually bring something to their fucking rural community. Wow.
Right.
That's what good governance does. That's not going to breed resentment.
No, not at all. Okay, so Susan Lee Milgate. This is the 56-year-old woman who threw a cream pie, or a crepe, whatever you call it, into the face of Natasha Files, the Northern Territory Chief Minister. She made an appearance before a local court in Darwin. She was charged with aggravated assault using a carriage service to harass. So you may not have heard she's also send a lot of abusive messages to government officials and Natasha Files herself. So it's not just the crepe that they're getting her for.
It was the hatful words.
But what's funny here, so she turned up. She was not required to enter a plea because this was like a casual sort of administrative hearing that was being done, just signing papers, dotting I's, crossing T's. But nonetheless, she attracted a fair bit of media, and not just that, but supporters. So you can see, if you look at the link for this, she actually had bouquets of flowers in her hands because supporters were coming up giving her gifts, giving her things like flowers, showing that they really, really like her for throwing a crepe into Files' face.
Oh, God.
So she was asked by members of the media outside court if she had anything to say to Natasha Files, and she said she had been trying to talk to her for 3.5 years and still haven't heard from her. She said, we tried to send her an apology, unequivocal apology letters. She wouldn't accept it. Okay. So, yeah, Natasha Files has been ghosting her, it seems.
I wonder why.
Yeah. She also said, that is Susan Milgate, that she feels fine and that she has nothing to hide. Nothing to hide. Well, I mean, it's pretty open and shut. She's on camera throwing it in her face. So, I mean, it's obvious where it's going to go. That'll be a big fine. Aggravated assault will get you a big fine, even if you don't have a record. So, still in the Northern Territory, you had a local councillor, his name is Jeffrey McLaughlin. He has been facing calls to resign. He lives in Tennant Creek in the Northern Territory, which has a very high Aboriginal population. And footage has emerged of him performing what he referred to as a citizen's arrest. So this is where you had a boy who looked like he was between the ages of 11 and 12. That's the way it's reported in the ABC anyway. I don't know if you can really tell that from the footage. But this was someone who was trying to rob him. So just find this. Oh, yeah. So it's alleged that the child broke into his house in late August. That caused him to chase him and then pin him down. So the video footage shows him keeping this boy on the ground by sitting on him, basically.
Yep.
And yeah, you can go and watch the footage here. You can just make out that this is a dark-skinned child. Now, he was basically saying, no, I've done nothing wrong here. And you've got the National Children's Commissioner.
Black fella running up to fucking like nearly dome that kid in the head towards the end of that video?
Yeah, they said there's two. I haven't actually. I've only seen the stills, but there's two people in it.
They didn't censor that
Anyway.
black fella's feet.
Yeah. So look, the National Children's Commissioner, Anne Hollands, who has the absolute face of a cat lady if I've ever seen one, has said that she recognised communities were frustrated with crime, but she also believes that a pattern is emerging in the Northern Territory. And that pattern, she's basically saying, is civilians, people who aren't police or, people who don't have, not members of authorities, are taking the law into their own hands. Okay, why are they doing that though? I mean, yeah, this guy referred to it as a citizen's arrest. That's him admitting, yeah, I was taking the law into my own hands. What else are you going to do if you catch a little kid trying to break into your home? Which is exactly what happened. How do you think they got the video footage of it? It's security footage. And here she is talking about a pattern of behavior.
The guy was like, I'm sad that my bike was stolen, but the person who stole it probably needed it more than I did, so I guess I'm happy.
Yeah. So she said, I felt that had the potential to incite violence against children and incite vigilantism in the Northern Territory. Well, it's like, okay, I kind of agree with you, but like, why is it? People are so fucking fed up with Aboriginal crime. They're so fed up with the cops being too scared to do anything about it that they have to do it themselves. Yeah. So no, I say this guy should not resign. Of course he shouldn't. He was doing
like a little.
There was nothing in the video that shows him
inciting vigilantism, inciting it. Were you around for that fucking town hall in Alice Springs where the fucking population was talking about lynching these little brown kids so maybe they'll fucking learn? We're past that, lady. We're well past that.
Right. And we wonder why people vote no.
Yeah.
Okay, so just I've got some quick stories to bring us to an end here. So Gladys Berejiklian is going forward with her attempt to have the findings of ICAC overturned, those findings against her that she engaged in what they did refer to as serious corrupt conduct, even though they did not make any referrals to police, and therefore there's not going to be any criminal charges. So
again, they'll just have to media action.
Yeah, so she's demanded documents from ICAC surrounding the factual issues which the report is based on. So yeah, she's pushing right ahead with all of this, and yeah, she's gonna fight it. So that'll be interesting. In New South Wales, remember those $3,000 fees that you had to pay for hotel quarantine? Well, they are chasing those up in New South Wales. It's estimated that there are around 17,000 people who have not paid. And what's happened now is that the regulator, which is called Revenue New South Wales, has issued more than 5,000 garnishee orders. So what this means is if you don't, just pay it back, pay that $3,000 fee back, they will go after other things. So they will go after your wages. If you've ever had a HEX deck, you'll know what garnishing wages means. They take that little bit out every week to pay your HEX debt. It's kind of similar. But this can also just go after people's bank accounts as well. So it's wide-ranging. So, yeah, 5,000 of those people are being forced to pay now by having their various accounts targeted and garnished as a result. So a lot of those people are basically saying, I should not have to pay it because hotel quarantine was compulsory. I had no choice in the matter. You basically locked me up in this hotel room, and now you're telling me I have to pay for it. Like, it's almost like having to pay for your jail. It would be good if criminals had to pay for their accommodation in some way, though. Topper was an advocate of that, you know, or at least they had to pay every bit of restitution possible to their victims, you know. Okay. So the IR changes. Now, they still are expecting at least the legislation to be introduced before the end of the year. You know, it's to do with multi-employer bargaining, same job, same pay. They're also calling it. So we've had two significant submissions made to the Parliament. One is by the Australian Chamber of Commerce, and then the other was by the Business Council. Okay, so you're basically talking about the two biggest business lobby groups in the country. So in terms of the Chamber of Commerce, so they're saying that changes to the gig economy and road transport, and that the changes that the laws would make to the gig economy and to transport, like, you know, Uber Eats and all that kind of stuff, is going to drive up prices, and that's ultimately going to be felt by consumers. So in other words, they don't want to pay more because apparently that's just always going to hurt consumers in some way. You know, part of me says, if that is the case, I don't care. They always find a way to jack up the price eventually anyway, you know. And people can't afford to buy these things unless they have a decent wage. So, I don't know. I don't really care. So in terms of the other one, what are they called? The Business Council. Their submission said that the industry will pay a heavy cost if the bill is passed, with operations likely to close, jobs lost, regional communities adversely hit, and state and federal tax and royalty revenues foregone. So look, Tony Burke, who's the IR minister, is saying that, look, service contractors are excluded from the new regulations that will soon come in unless they are deemed to be a labour hire company. Now, being a labour hire company was previously how you were able to get away from all this kind of stuff. But what Labor is doing with these raft of changes is closing those loopholes and going after labour hire companies. Because that was a good way of avoiding statutory rights and paying decent wages, was just employing people through these labour hire companies.
Yeah.
So
contractors,
they have to,
not employees, contractors.
Yeah, right. So now instead you have, you know, they might be, you know, they're going to tell you that they're a service contractor. But part of how they are closing the loopholes here is that they're introducing a test in terms of how you will be defined as a labour hire company. They're saying that that test is unfair, basically because too many of them are going to be deemed as labour hire companies. Yep. And yeah, I don't doubt that. That probably will happen. Okay, last story. This is on financial regulation. So there will be draft legislation revealed soon, which is to do with e-payments. So, for example, through Apple Pay, Google Pay, and you know, these are digital financial services, and this legislation would bring them under the regulatory power of the Reserve Bank, because, you know, all these other you know, payment services are regulated and come under the regulatory power of the Reserve Bank, but not things like Google Pay. So this is another example of the law and regulation just needing to catch up with technology, because it usually lags a fair way behind. And these will be changes to the Payment Systems Act that is actually 25 years old now, so probably in need of an upgrade.
Yeah.
So this would extend the existing regulatory regime, which grants the RBA oversight of transactions, such as credit cards and FPOS. So yeah, those same transactions that you might perform with Google Pay, they'll be regulated in the same way. Don't have a problem with that.
It's still a transaction.
Of course, yeah. So I don't, yeah.
Why not?
All right. Okay, guys. Well, there we go. That was, I think, episode 194. Thank you for that. And I know I mentioned stuff about maybe doing the race live or something. I still think that might be a bit off because we're just busy with other stuff. So, look, to be honest, I'm going to say that until the end of the year, we're just going to be doing the Races War. All right, but we'll do that every week. We still get something. So, yeah. Thank you for listening. Check us out at theracer.biz.
See you,
and we'll see you
fuckers.
next week.